internal medicine is by far one of the largest specialties in medicine, and so there's a ton of applicants to internal medicine. That being said, there's also a ton of programs for training in internal medicine because we need a lot of internists in this world to take care of all of us, because that's what internists do. So I don't actually know off the top of my head what the acceptance rate is. I can just say, sort of ranking it in terms of, are you going to get a residency position somewhere in the US if you choose internal medicine? The answer is most likely yes, because there's so many programs to choose from. And if you are coming from, a US medical school and you've done, reasonably well, you should be able to match somewhere in the US for an internal medicine training program. That doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get your top medical program all the time. The top programs at the top of the list are obviously competitive no matter what specialties that you're going into. On the other hand, when we're talking about fellowship applications and fellowship positions, I'd remember that a fellowship is just advanced training that you do after you've done your internal medicine training. The two top most competitive fellowships in internal medicine are gastroenterology and hepatology, which is the same thing. It's one fellowship that you do first, or cardiology. So those are the two most competitive things. We know that. Again, I can't recite the acceptance rates or the match rates out of all applicants, but we do start working with our residents, right, pretty much when they come in intern year. Within that first 6 months of intern year, we start working with them and making sure they have mentors, and research projects are really important in GI and hepatology, and good strong letters from mentors, doing very well on your clinical rotations, and having defined interest in the field, because we do get a lot of applicants for the specialty, and there's not as many spots, and so people do not match in GI and hepatology every year, because there's a lot of interest in the field. Now, when we're talking about hepatology in particular, there is another fellowship that you do if you want to do transplant hepatology like I do. So it's a second fellowship. There's two ways to do transplant hepatology. You can do a traditional pathway, which is what I did. So I did my 3 years of internal medicine. I was a chief resident for a year, so that was like a 4th year that I did. And then I did a 3-year GI hepatology fellowship, which is the traditional way. And then I did an additional 1-year advanced fellowship in transplant hepatology, which was its own separate application and match process. There are usually, for people who are interested in a transplant hepatology fellowship, you can usually find a spot in the country, because there has for a while been a bit of a workforce shortage in transplant hepatology. That being said, the most competitive programs are still hard to get into and hard to get a spot. So it depends where you want to go. The other way that you can become a transplant hepatologist is once you finish your internal medicine residency training, when you're applying for GI and hepatology, maybe you already know you want to be a transplant hepatologist and you want to predominantly clinically see patients. There's this advanced clinical pathway that you can go through where you can complete the fellowship in 3 years instead of 4 years with just a clinical practice focus. So it doesn't include a lot of research and other things. And that's really going to make you a predominant clinician in transplant hepatology. And that's a 3-year pathway. And there are select programs in the US that participate in that kind of pathway. Northwestern historically has been one of them, but there's other programs throughout the country that do that as well. So the entire training pathway to become a transplant hepatologist can be anywhere from the minimum of 6 years after medical school to as many as 8 years after medical school.